GamingBolt presents 15 things only solo players will understand. With all of the games that emphasize finding friends and communicating, it's not easy being a solo player. Whether you're playing alone in multiplayer titles, locked out of activities meant for pre-made teams, or just trying to find an ending that won't disappoint you, there are a few woes that only solo players can understand. Let's take a look at 15 such issues below. Soloing co-op missions. How many times have you had to solo the Nightfall in Destiny? What about partaking in the weekly HVTs in The Division in patch 1.3 days, or current legendary missions? Co-op missions are designed for multiple players, and offer some great rewards in certain games. And while they could be soloed, having to brave that challenge alone is much tougher than having a team. No backup. When playing co-op missions with friends, you have the luxury of making mistakes. Playing solo doesn't offer that, and if you go down, there's no one around to revive you. Now granted, many games offer solo players many options to self-revive, heal, self-sustain, and whatnot. But again, when soloing a mission meant for teams, you have to take extra care of yourself because no one else will. No idiots. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you don't have to worry about playing with morons when solo. We're sure some people make mistakes, but there are other players who are simply insane, annoying, hateful, or outright frustrating to play with. Being able to play solo thus can be quite liberating at times. No raiding. Though you could solo some co-op missions or dungeons in games, it's not like every single activity in a game like Destiny, Guild Wars 2, or even World of Warcraft has that luxury. Most players simply can't get past the first phase of a raid, much less complete it. Even PvP modes like Trials of Osiris and Destiny won't launch unless you locate 2 teammates on your own. Given how some solo players can't always schedule these things in advance, they're pretty much left just skipping them. Missing the best content. While some games like World of Warcraft do provide enough story and solo content to tide players over, that's not the case in games like Destiny, which keep the best mechanics and content locked away for more social players. No, it doesn't matter how many raid mechanics show up in strikes or story missions. They're just not the same. Facing bosses alone. Leaving aside the challenges of soloing co-op missions, solo players also have to deal with overwhelming challenges in single-player campaigns by themselves, especially when it comes to bosses. The Soulsborne games, and Nier Automata in some ways, can be slight exceptions to this rule. But generally, when you're engaged in a boss fight in Persona 5, or bringing down a corrupted Sawtooth in Horizon Zero Dawn, you can't count on someone else to hop in and help. The internet could show you the way, but you've still got to do everything yourself. Solo queue woes. Solo players have interesting dilemmas. They can still be classified as solo even if they're playing multiplayer titles. Basically, the best solo players won't have as much success against the best pre-made teams. Case in point, in a heavy team-based game like Overwatch, you're not going to get anywhere near as much assistance or coordination alone as you would with a pre-made team. Unless, of course, you're a Surefour, Carpe, Seagull, or Shadowburn. Finding good single-player campaigns. For the more social gamers, a good story isn't as important. Heck, some people hop straight into multiplayer for Call of Duty and almost never touch the campaign year in and year out. For those who prefer to engage in a rich story, not every game will deliver on their expectations. Taking Call of Duty as an example again, you could get a fairly stupid story with Black Ops 3, but some great missions and a decent plot with Infinite Warfare. It's a roll of the dice at the end of the day. Disappointing endings. In fact, the roll of the dice applies doubly when dealing with a single-player campaign's ending. Underwhelming/cliffhanger/terrible endings aren't uncommon. Just ask those who finished Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, or Mass Effect 3, which actually prompted the Director's Cut DLC to change the ending. The fact that there are games which offer true endings in their DLCs is also quite annoying. Moving on to new games. Eventually, you'll have to move on to a new game, which can be somewhat trying, except if the previous game you played had sucked, in which case maybe it can be liberating. This isn't necessarily bad, but for those attached to the universes in their favorite titles, it can take some getting used to. You'll also be spending more money in the process, as opposed to those who stay on one game with friends for seemingly ages. Gank squads and griefers. The woes of a solo player can be worse in an online environment, especially when you have to face off against gank squads in the Division's Dark Zone. Similarly, if you head into a dastardly server in Minecraft, then you may find griefers ruining your day. Don't even get us started on being a solo player in games like DayZ, Rust, and Ark Survival Evolved, where hours of work can be wiped away by a single trollish squad. Replaying the same game. If you have no interest in multiplayer, don't want to socialize, or simply find single player to be more entertaining in a specific game, then you're often relegated to playing the same content again and again. Sure, New Game Plus can alleviate this, but in the long term, it's still the same enemies, the same boss patterns, and the same challenges, instead of differing opponents and tactics that multiplayer opponents can pose. Lack of free single-player content. Again, while New Game Plus and higher difficulties are great, many games with multiplayer often receive free content in that mode alone. If you like to solo queue in multiplayer games, that's great. If you're mostly a solo campaign player, that can be quite disheartening. Call of Duty, Halo 5 Guardians, Battlefield, and Grand Theft Auto 5 offer plenty of free online content, but sometimes you just want something with a bit more story to enjoy. Not needing multiplayer patches. Multiplayer fans are required to download large multiplayer-focused patches to continue enjoying their game. Doom, Halo 5 Guardians, and so on are strong examples of this. The good news is that solo fans who only engage in single-player titles can just play offline. Though some games toss single-player fixes into the patch as well, it's not like you're locked out of the game without the latest patch. Surviving server issues. At the end of the day, solo players can at least play something when a game's servers go down, except for games that are always online, of course. If Call of Duty, Destiny, or Overwatch is your life, then you're pretty much screwed when the servers have a fit. Similarly, heavy server load can prevent you from playing an online game. Ask the number of people who went into a queue when Destiny's Rise of Iron DLC released. Solo players who are into single-player as well as multiplayer games thankfully don't face this problem. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.